Ready? We are going live. Okay, Carlos.
Welcome to the third MORTEXVAR seminar. Today we have Dr. Mykola Tarasenko, who will propose a reassessment of chapter 41 of the Book of the Dead, from Pharaonic to Roman times. Dr. Tarasenko is an Egyptologist specialized in the study of ancient Egyptian funerary literature and art, especially the Book of the Dead. He is a research fellow at the Faculty of Asian and Middle Eastern Studies, University of Oxford, and fellow at the Trinity College. At the same time, Dr. Tarasenko is a leading researcher at the Krimsky Institute of Oriental Studies of the National Academy of Sciences of Ukraine, Department of Near and Middle East in Kiev, and head of the Center of Egyptology at the same institute of that academy. His research interests focus on culture, religion, mythology, and art of ancient Egypt. He is also interested in the history and archaeology of civilizations of the ancient Near East. The topics of his publications are visual and textual traditions of Egyptian funerary objects, such as papyri, coffins, and mummy bandages, and ancient Egyptian artifacts in the museums of Ukraine. Dr. Tarasenko has studied and published Egyptian objects in a number of Ukrainian museums, among them Odessa Archaeological Museum of the National Academy of Sciences of Ukraine, which contains the largest and oldest collection. Dr. Tarasenko has archaeological field experience, having taken part in the excavations of international expeditions in Giza necropolis, Egypt, Bilsk settlement in the forest steppe, Skythia, Poltava region, Ukraine, ancient Hellenic settlements and the necropolis of Tiras, Odessa region, Ukraine, Iluraton and Kythia in eastern Crimea, Ukraine. Today's seminar will have 1 hour, and at the end of that hour, you can formulate your questions in the YouTube chat, please, and then Dr. Tarasenko will answer at the end of the seminar. Thank you very much, Dr. Tarasenko, for being here today. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Carlos, and hello, everybody. Very nice to meet you, everybody, today. So, the topic of my lecture for today will be the chapter 41 of the Book of the Dead Reconsidered, the textual metamorphoses of the spell from the Middle Kingdom to the Ptolemaic Period. So, the focus of this lecture will be an analysis of a passage in chapter 41 of the Book of the Dead, which is difficult to translate and understand. I will talk about the part of the chapter that appears in the coffin texts and subsequently underwent textual changes in the tradition of the New Kingdom and Side Ptolemaic period. So, let presentation start. Yes. In sources of the New Kingdom, that is of 7 recensions of the Book of the Dead, a total of 9 examples of chapter 41 have been identified. These are 8 papyri and 1 inscribed in a Theban tomb. The text is not complete there. It's Theban tomb TT 11 of Jehuti. 1 row with the text of chapter 41 comes from Memphis, and the rest of the manuscripts have a Theban origin, so we can say that it's more or less even really Theban redaction of the Book of the Dead. They all date to the 18th dynasty of the New Kingdom, from the Ramesside period, that is dynasties 19 to 12. Examples of chapter 41 are not known. It is not known why it disappeared from the repertoire of the Book of the Dead during this time, but the spell reappears in documents of the 3rd intermediate period, more specifically 21st and 22nd dynasty, from which 4 manuscripts with the text of chapter 41 of the Book of the Dead have survived. There are no direct primary sources for this spell in the corpora of the pyramid texts and coffin texts. However, it includes the final part of spell 892 of the coffin texts, which suggests that the text of the Book of the Dead, chapter 41, was created on the basis of the funerary spell of the Middle Kingdom. But spell 892 is known only from one object. This is the Asyut coffin of Iri, later used by Anh F. It's kept in the Cairo Museum with the number 41, 890. 80, where it is written on the bottom. The interior design of this coffin bears a resemblance to the Hermopolitan coffins of the end of the 11th dynasty, B1 BO and B6 C, but this similarity is not enough to show the Hermopolitan origin of the text itself. First of all, let's consider a fragment of spell 892 of the coffin text, which forms the basis of the passage of the chapter 41 of the Book of the Dead under discussion. So here you can see it. The translation is O or I, Tehepti, who is in the west, in life and breathing, or I life and breathing. I guide Imiu Ach Uru to Hepri's boat after I have spoken with the crew of Reatum in the evening. Here you can also see the various translations of this text made by Faulkner, Barge, and Carrier. And now we will look more carefully to this text and make some comments of the spelling. The beginning, it's not survived fully. We have only this A1 determinative. The sign A1 has survived, which can be understood either as part of a verb from ending with the suffix pronoun I, or as the last sign in the spelling of the independent pronoun enek, which is quite consistent with the size of the gap. Faulkner and Barge are included to favor the first option, while Claude Carrier proposes another restoration, which is questionable because the damaged space is smaller than the form senu I would suggest. The next interesting word is Tehepti. This word is attested only here in Egyptian texts, that is something like Hapax legomenon. Faulkner apparently understood the sign G41, this sign of a bird, in it as a determinative, and saw in this noun the name of some bird. The same meaning is given in the coffin text for index dictionary. According to Faulkner, the word has the grammatical form of a feminine noun in the dual with the ending T. I, something unclear, my two Tehepti birds, which are alive in the west. The other translators have also read a dual. Claude Carrier understood Tehepti as two birds, while also conjecturing a following suffix pronoun I, although he does not include it in his translation. Meanwhile, Hanem refrains from translating this word. I mean his dictionary, both of Middle Egyptian and of Egyptian at whole, indicating only that it is a substantive. If we assume that this substantive comes from the verb tehep, that is to drive, to dip, or immerse, irrigate, with the addition of a nisba t, then its meaning can be posited as an adjective, divided on planged, one, etc. Perhaps we have here not a species of waterwolf, but probably an epithet of Osiris, especially if we recall the well-known mythological motif of Isis finding the dead corpse of Osiris in the water, or the deceased identified with him. With this interpretation of Tehepti, its connection with the following text becomes understandable. Imet Imentet, who is in the west. In addition, if Tehepti is the name epithet of Osiris or deceased, the presence of sign A1 I mean this one, after it becomes clear. In this case, it is not a suffix pronoun, but a determinative. The spelling should then be reconsidered as a full form. You can see here, tehepti, with the translation, so it all the restoration of the beginning of the sentence as an independent pronoun in act. We have an appeal of the resurrected Osiris or deceased in the first person. I am tehepti in the meaning the immediate one, who is in the West in life and breathes. The next part is Anh em tau. All three translators understand the phrase as breathing, literally to live by the air, at the beginning of a new sentences. Apparently assuming the frequent omission of a suffix pronoun in Egyptian texts. That is Anh, then probably I, am tau. I am breathing. Such a translation is acceptable, of course, but grammatically, em taui also can be the ending of the sentences in life and breathing, as I propose. The next one is this long transliteration phrase, seshemu I, imu ahuru, erua, eruia, hepri, medu en I, and esut ra etuma meshero. This narrative is connected with the motif of the solar barks of Khepri and Reatum, which continues the themes of the deceased's resurrection. He's joining the crew of the solar barks. I guide Ime Ahuru to Khepri's boat after I have spoken with the crew of Reatum in the evening. Indicative here is the sequence verb forms Sejem F in the first sentence, Sejem I guide, and Sejem NF in the second, Medu and I have spoken. Thus, guiding Imi Ahuru to the back of the rising sun is the present for the deceased, while interaction with the crew of the evening bark of Reatum recedes into the past. So, as for this strange Imi Ahuru, it's one of the most controversial passages in the entire fragment of text, is the interpretation of this Imi Ahuru. In the corpus of the coffin texts, this deity is attested only 3 times, in spells 176, 853, and 892. In each cases, the orthography is different, as you can see from this table. Thematically, spell 166-76, which is on 2 coffins from El Bershem, is similar to the fragment of spell 892 that we are discussing. Here we can see the translation, God is coming in peace, they say. The Imiu Ahuru, they gave me appearance, how with Re, going forth to the sky, to the place where rays. The same text with certain transformations is repeated at the beginning of a spell 853 on the coffin of Karen and I from Saqqara. Here you can see the translation. God is coming in peace, they say in Ahuru. They allowed, probably me, to appear together with rats who are below the dwellers of the horizon. Starting with Faulkner, translators believe that Ime Ahuru should be read as Ime Yahuru, those who are in the full moon, for example, as Faulkner proposed. And the very same translation, but the French were also given by Varga and Carrier. The same meaning is also proposed in Lexikon der ägyptischen Götter und Göttergesellschaften, die im Forum sind. Thus, a correction of ich to the so-called correct form Yah, the moon, is supposed. And this is supposedly confirmed by the spelling in the Memphis version of the text in Coffin text 7556M. Although it should be borne in mind that this is the only such example. At the same time, the moon, even when full, that is designed as Ur, big, cannot be associated with the solar image of Khepri in spell 892 or Re in spell 176. So that's why such a restoration of meaning is very problematic. Quite definitely another being must be meant here. And by the way, this is indicated in Coffin text word index, which has Ur, a so-called great entrapper, literary capturer or catcher, which is mentioned in spell 1024 of the Coffin texts in connection with the divine Hanenu god. So it could be translated, this sentences, as I saw the great entraper, Ur, in the form Iru, on or off the Hanenu boat in, and then text destroyed. On the basis of this parallel, if to derive the preposition emu from the composition of the compound name of the character in question, in spell 192, one can offer the following translation. Seshum I emu uru via Khepri as I lead over emu by the great entrappers to the board of Khepri, which, however, does not agree well with the preposition er. The image of Imi Uru is further developed not only in chapter 41 of the Book of the Dead, but also in chapter 38a, what is also very interesting. As in chapter 41, a small part of this text originates from the passage of Coffin text spell 892 that we are discussing. Nonetheless, spell 892 is never named among the primary sources of chapter 38a and 38b of the Book of the Dead by modern scholars. In addition to mentioning Imi Ur, chapter 38 in Papyrus of Nebseni contains the text similar to chapter 41 and spell 892. Send F and I's bow and gap. He Atum opens the gates of gap for me. Chapters 38a and 38b are devoted to breathing, Anch em Tau, in the afterlife, and have the same title, Er en Anch em Tau em Heret Nesher, a spell for breathing in the necropolis. It should be noticed that in addition to these passages that relate to spell 192 of the Coffin text, chapters 38a and 38b and 41 have other similarities. The identification of the deceased with Atum and Ruti in chapter 41 echoes the beginning of chapter 38b in Papyrus of Nun. Here we can see I am Atum in chapter 41, I am Atum, more effective than Ruti. And in chapter 38b, I am Ruti, the elder of Atum Achembit. In addition, chapter 41 and chapters 41 and 38a and b have a closely similar ending. In chapter 41, Anchen I Nehemem Het Mut I Miura Ranep. I live, I am saved after my death, like Re every day. And in chapter 38a in Papyrus of Nebseni, Anch I am Het Mut I Ranep. I live after my death every day. And 38b, Anch I am Jedu Wuchem I, Anch am Het Mut Mi Ra Ranep. I live in Busiris. I repeat life after death, like Re every day. And in chapter 38a of the Book of the Dead, we have the sentence, Ich and I emu Ur. I have sized imi Ur, spelling from the Papyrus of Nebseni. Here you can also see some published translation also on the same slide. Well, so as you can see from these translations, the scholars almost unanimously, with the exception of Eric Hornung, see here a construction with a preposition of res, ichen I emu ach ur. I have cited those who are in the nets of the great. If to accept such a translation, then, in my opinion, firstly, it will be more appropriate to see the indirect genitive here, chenai, emu, ach, in it's an ur. Secondly, there is a temptation to reconsider the translation of the sentence seshemu I emu ach uru ervia hepri in the spell in 192 of the Coffin text as a similar genitive construction. Seshemu I emu ach and uru ervia hepri. I guide those who are in the nets of the great ones to the boat of hepri. In this suggested version, one can even see a reference to the idea of the souls of the sinners and enemies caught in the nets of the soul catchers and led to a horizon in the eastern sky. However, no one has proposed such a translation, despite the similarity of the construction of the sentence. And thirdly, in all cases, except of papyrus of Nepket from Gur, where Ur is spelled with the determinative A40, while for Ur Great White, the determinative A19 is common, as you can see here. In most of cases, and only here we can see another variant. As for papyrus Nepket, I think I see this one. Here we see the spelling ichen f uru. He has cited the great one. This is either a copyist mistake or more likely his correction of reading that was obscure to him. In my opinion, therefore, emu ach ur in chapter 38a is the same character as in spell in 192 and other spells of the Coffin text considered above. As I already indicated, in the lexicon der ägyptischen Götter und Götterbeziehungen, and this may also be indicated by the fact that in spell 192, emu ach ur appears in connection with the deceased getting the opportunity to breathe, anchem tau, which is the aim indicated by the title of chapter 38a and 38b of the Book of the Dead. However, the example of the variability of spellings of this name in another manuscripts is indicative of a process of losing the original meaning for emu ach ur, which is especially clearly demonstrated by the papyrus of Nepket, where the form u appears. So let's go now to chapter 141 of the Book of the Dead, and we begin from the Theban redaction, that is the redaction of the New Kingdom. Let's consider how the same fragment of the text was transformed in this spell, respectively in its Memphite and Theban versions of the New Kingdom. Let's begin from Memphis, from Papyrus of Nepseni. Here we can see the text, "Oh, this gatekeeper of Beti, the king of Lower Egypt, who is in the west. I eat, I live by the air, or I am breathing. I guide Imi Aj-ur to the great board of Hepri. I speak with the evening board crew." And in Papyrus of Nu, that is in Theban redaction, in Theban version, originated from Thebes, we can see another text, "Oh, this gatekeeper of Itebet, the king of Lower Egypt, who is in the west. I eat, I live by the air, where I am breathing. I guide Imi Aj-ur to the board of Hepri. I speak with the evening board crew of Atum." So here we can see also the different variants of translation of this text. It was translated many times by different translators, scholars such as Barget, Allen, Faulkner, Hornung, later Carrier, Burkhard Bakke, Stephen Kyo. So quite well-known texts for Egyptologists. And now we should go to the comments on this text. The first is the beginning. The sentence begins as a reference to a certain area, that is gatekeepers, that also can be translated as guardian. This is a compound noun, literally meaning waiting to the door. In the Middle Kingdom text, the noun gatekeeper is absent, and the address is given directly to Tehepti. The next one word, it's have a very the next noun associated with this area is a genitive, denotes a toponym, as we can see, with different spelling, Betty, Itebet, Tebit, etc. And as for toponym, we can see this determinative O89, which shows that it's really some toponym, some geographical place. But its identification is extremely difficult, since the spelling varies greatly in the manuscripts, as can be seen from this table. You can see that the spelling in many cases is quite different. According to Paul due to the discrepancies of spelling, this word cannot be accurately identified at all. At the same time, in his translation, he preferred the form Betty, this one after papyrus of Nebseni, one of the classical papyrus for translation. In this example, suggests we see the result of the loss of understanding of the meaning of the original word Tehepti during the New Kingdom. In the papyrus of Nebseni and Nu, the forms display a clear alliteration, that is, the repetition of the consonants B and T with the next word, Pti, Biti, and Itebet, Biti. The most stable form is given by the papyri of Imenhotep, Yahmes, and Mesemnecher, where the spelling Tibit is given. I mean, this group of three sources, three papyri, Tibit. But it's also displaying alliteration as Tibit, Biti. The single example of the spelling Debet in the papyrus of Nefer Uben F, this one, however, finds a continuation in the copies of the Third Intermediate Period, where we see forms with D, Idebut, Idebu, and Idebet. This one is papyrus of Panis Titaui, Nesihansu, and Gatseshe. Alliteration is also preserved here, but it is not as obvious as in the manuscripts of the 18th dynasty. Thus, one should probably not try to identify any real toponym underlying this word, which appears to be a distortion of the primary form Tehepti. The next word to discuss is Biti, that is the king of Lower Egypt. As in the previous case, Biti seems to appear at this point because scribes could not understand the meaning of Tehepti. Most likely, this addition is dedicated by the tendency to use alliteration. Although Faulkner translates the link Pti Biti or Itebet Biti as a toponym, the city of the bee. In the 19th century, Lepage Renouf reasonably saw the epithet of Osiris as underlying the king of Lower Egypt, obviously a reference to Osiris, the northern cult center of this god, which can be confirmed by the following further explanation, Imi Imenet, who is in the west. So, if we accept the interpretation of Tehepti as an epithet of Osiris in the coffin text spelled 892, it becomes obvious that the scribes did not distort the meaning of the forerunner, but only replaced the epithet, which was already obscure to them, with a curious alliterative formula. And the next spell to discuss, this next spelling is Unem I Anchaim Taui. in life and breathing. So the writing Anchem Taui in life and breathing of spell 892 of the coffin text, usually interpreted as the end of one clause and the beginning of another. In the Book of the Dead, accurates a replacement addition unim I eat. Here, too, there can be no change in the meaning of the original text. Osiris, that is the deceased, acquires the opportunity not only to breathe, Anchem Taui, but also to eat in the West. In the case of a human being, to receive an allocation of food for the dead. And some translators believe that Anchem I am Taui should be translated as I live in the air, which implies a direct return of the resurrected people to the world of the living. In my opinion, we can see rather a person's magical acquisition of his physical abilities in the afterlife. The next word is imi ach ur. There can be no doubt that this spelling is a transformation of imi ach uru in the spell 892 of the coffin text, with a transition from ach to ach. So this one, as you see. Well, but whereas in chapter 38 of the Book of the Dead, the form imi ach ur is preserved. In chapter 41, a new deity appears with a name that has a different meaning. Here we can see from this table different variants of spelling this name that can be divided into 4 groups. The first is using the form aj. The form aj we can see in papyrus of Nepseni, papyrus of Mesemnecher, papyrus of Hat Neferet here, and also the copies of the 21st dynasty. The second variant is using the form ad as papyrus of Nu here, ad, and papyrus of Amonhetep, this one. Forms without the preposition imi as papyrus of Nefer Uben F, this one. There is no imi here, only ach-ur. And the fourth group is a hieratic form, such as also this papyrus of Hat, or the papyrus of Hat Neferet, and copies of the 21st dynasty, and also papyrus of Yahmes joining this group with its special semi-hieratic extreme cursive shrift, which is also, so here the changes, for example, with the determinatives, they're mostly connected with the specific hieratic origin of these documents. The decipherment of the name of this character remains controversial because the meaning of ach is ambiguous. The short form ach-ur, which is given in the papyrus of Nefer Uben F and Yahmes, can be correlated with the single name Anch-ur on the statue Cairo CG 682. The Patronuf translated ach as cleaver, while Allen and Quirk as perceiver, Hornung as furche, Claude Carrier as confine, and Volker as guide. Barger and Bacchus leave ach untranslated. In Lexikon der ägyptischen Götter und Götterbegründungen, the meaning of ach in a given name is also left undefined. On the one hand, it undoubtedly goes back to the Middle Egyptian form ach-ur, used in the forerunner of the chapter, coffin text spell 892. On the other hand, if ach in the name, imi ach-ur, is a verbal noun from ach, to shop, to stop, then this character can be a personification of the bar of the morning solar boat of Khepri, mentioned below. That is, cutting the water of celestial waterway, and metaphorically night, darkness, and death. This interpretation could be supposed by the existence of a short rating adjet for Manejet, the name of the day god of the sun, And in the Ptolemaic period, the term ach also denoted the sun. And we can also remember the term anedjo, sunshine. So the next is the via Hepri, that is the board of Hepri. So Hepri embodies the rising sun, thus referring to the morning bark of the sun on a jet. Then we see the form isut itum imiut meshero, literally by the crew of Atum, which is in the evening. This is the crew of the evening bark of the sun, Mesektet, in which his sunset incarnation, Atum, makes his night journey through the underworld. So that's about the reduction of the New Kingdom. And now, in order to digression of the transformation of the discussed fragment to be complete, I do consider it in the final stage of its existence, that is in a weight reduction. So here we see the text based on a well-known classical papyrus of U. Ankh, papyrus of Turin, 1791. Oh, let's see the translation. Oh, this guardian who is in the west. He eats, he lives by the air, guides the boat of Hepri, and speaks to the Ennead, which is in Ishero. So here we can see the different translation of this fragment by Claude Carrier and Burkhard Bacchus. And now let's go to the comments of this fragment. The first one is Iri a pu en imentet. Oh, this guardian who is in the west. Here I find some the editing of the inherited text. The forms of the new kingdom as pti biti or itebet biti or tebit biti, which were evidently incomprehensible at this time, disappeared at all, was in nothing like this. But the Osirian semantics of the clause are preserved, ending who is in the west. So here we also see the reference to Osirian ideas. The next one, Unemo f anhef tau, he eats, he lives by the air. The change from the new Egyptian first person, Unemo aich anh I am tau, to the third person form is characteristic to the late edition of the Book of the Dead, so it's quite common changing, which is not specific to this fragment, but it's the whole tendency of the period. The next one is Seshemo Onvuya Hepri, guides the boat of Hepri. As at the beginning of the passage, a reduction can be noted here. Imi ach-ur disappeared, which can be explained as due to the incomparability of this compound for the later copies. Also, we see the final changes connected with missing its original meaning, going back to the Middle Kingdom. And the next is Medut and Shajet Imi Ishero. Well, these sentences shows most clearly the ways in which the text was edited in its latest forms. The late Egyptian form with first person addresses Mudemo eyes becomes the natural construction Medut. The word isut, ship's crew, apparently due to its obscurity for the scribes, is replaced by psejet, Ennead. The spelling Meshero, evening, was changed to the phonetically close Ishero, temple and sacred lake dedicated to the goddess Mut in the Karnak. As a result, the original meaning was completely lost here. And instead of turning to the evening solar board, here then appear to the 9 originally Heliopolitan gods, Ennead, who found themselves in the temple of the Theban goddess in Karnak. So to sum up, the history of a small passage of the text of chapter 41 of the Book of the Dead that I have considered in this lecture demonstrates its transformation in three chronological phases of its existence. The first phase, this is a unique text of Asiut. I mean, it's spell 892. This is a unique text of Asiut, or possibly Hermopolitan origin. At this stage, the semantics of the passage do not go beyond the Egyptians' idea of an Assyrian and solar afterlife. The deceased associates himself with the resurrected Osiris. Obviously, the rare epithet of Osiris, Tehepti, the immersed one, is used here. At the same time, he wishes to join the crew of the morning and evening solar boats. The interpretation of the compound name Imi Ahuru, which is usually interpreted as lunar, is disputable and indeed unlikely due to its conjunction with the crew of a solar boat. He is more likely to be associated with Ahur, that is the great entraper, a character who apparently was supposed to resist the forces of darkness on the bow of the solar boat of Hepri. Having volunteered to bring Sashemu I, Imi Ahuru, to the boat of Hepri, the deceased quite clearly identified himself with the solar deity in this fragment. The next verse is chapter 41 of the Book of the Dead in the Theban redaction. This text is known from one Memphite papyrus and the small group of Theban documents from the 18th and 21st dynasties. The new interpretation of the passage endows it with a new intermediate motif related to gaining the opportunity to eat Unemu I in the afterlife. So here we can see this according to the papyrus of Nu. Oh, this gatekeeper of Tibet, the king of Lower Egypt, who is in the west. So here is Osirian motif. Then second, intermediate, I eat, I live by the air, finding the ability to eat and breathe in the afterlife. And third is the solar, I guide Imech Achur to the boat of Hepri. I speak with the evening boat crew of Aitum. So here you can see morning and evening boat motif connected with solar beliefs. So in this reduction, the image of Tehepti is replaced by the alliterative form Biti, or Itebet, or Tebi, Debet, Idebet, and then Biti, while the toponym Pti, or Itebet, Tebit, Debet, Idebet, is obviously imaginary and created for the particular passage. There are no such real toponym known for us. At the same time, the Osirian context does not change. Imi Ahuru is replaced by a new character, Imi Achur, despite the fact that the image of Imi Ahur can be found at the same time in chapter 38a of the Book of the Dead. This Imi Achur is also endowed with impressive solar semantics. Thus, in the period of the New Kingdom, the Egyptians mostly understood the meaning of the forerunner text, while generally preserving it. They might have and made very interesting corrections to it, which is also very interesting for us. And the next phase is the final phase of the history and evolution of this text, of the transmission, is the chapter 41 of the Book of the Dead in the late redaction, Ptolemaic and Side and Ptolemaic. The text is widely distributed in various centers of Egypt during this time. A lot of copies of this text, not so small number as in the New Kingdom, and especially in the Middle Kingdom, only one source is known. Here we see hundreds of copies of this text. But in this edition, obscure images and motifs either completely disappear or change beyond recognition. For example, formed medu I and isut itum imiut mashero looks absolutely another way. Pere medut and sejet imi ishero. This testifies to the Egyptian priests' gradual loss of understanding of the meaning of this passage at the end of the tradition of the existence of the Book of the Dead. So, to very final sum up, I can summarize the results of my research of this small fragment in the form of such a table, where we can see the changes of this text on the three phases I spoke before. So here we can see the coffin text spell in 192, where we hit tehepti, imut, imentet. In a Sieben redaction of the Book of the Dead, chapter 41, we see iri a pui and itebet bike imi imenet. And in the late redaction, we have only iri a pui and imentet. The next sentence is em anch em taui. In the New Kingdom Book of the Dead, chapter 41, unem I, anch I em taui. Yes, with editing this form. And in the late redaction, unem f, anch f, em taui, with the changing from first person to the third person. Then in next sentences in the coffin text, seshemo I imiu ach uru eruia hepri. In the New Kingdom form, seshemo I imi ach ur eruia hepri. We see here the changes of this consonant, and in the final stage, we don't see them at all. Shem and Wua and Hepri. Then the last sentences, Medu and I and Isut Ra Itumo Ermeshero in the Middle Kingdom coffin text. Then in the Sieben redaction, Medu I and Isut Intum Imiut Meshero. And finally, in the very late redaction, Medut and Psejet Imiu Ishero, with the complete losing of the meaning of the original text, not only from the Middle Kingdom, but also from the New Kingdom. This was my lecture. Thank you very much for your attention. I will be very grateful for questions if you have them.
Thank you very much, Mykola. It has been a very interesting talk. Ernesto tells me that we don't have questions yet, but I have some. So I would like to start with one question. If you think this very interesting text can be related to the eastern part of the sky, because it immediately remembered me of your interpretation of the "ach" word as a trap. It reminded me of the escape of the net spells in the coffin text. It is the 473 to 481 spells in which the deceased has to escape some trappers or catchers who want to eat him. We don't know very well if we can locate this precisely, as almost always in the coffin text. We don't know if the action happens to the west or to the east. But clearly, the reference to the sun and the try to look for breath or for breathing or for air points more to the east than to the west. I don't know what you think of this possible connection with the other net spells in the coffin text.
Yes. Thank you very much for this question and ideas. Yes, I really sure that I also can agree with you that the solar semantics of this fragment could be mostly connected with the eastern sky, because of this very interesting character which could be connected with the solar boat. First of all, with the solar boat of Hepri, that is with the eastern sky. Connected with the eastern sky. But at the same time, we also see here the Osirian ideas, and as well, we see here the mention also the board of Atum. that is the evening part of the sun. But as I was trying to show in the case of the coffin text, spell 892, the crew of the Atum bug, that is of the Western sky bug, is replaced to the past of the deceased. So that's why we can see that the orientation of the movement of his development is going from west to east, and he's going to east. And east is a present for him. It's not his past. It's another form of verb he used in describing his relation to the boat of Kepri. So that's why, yes, I can surely agree with you that this is idea of it describes the resurrected. Yes, that's on the eastern horizon. Yes, exactly.
Thank you, Mykola. I don't know, Ernesto, if there are some other questions from the YouTube chat.
No, until now, no, there are no questions.
Okay.
Everything appears to be clear.
Okay, yeah, for sure. Ernesto, do you have some question for Dr. Tarasenko, maybe?
I do actually. I was thinking about this toponym and the epithet of Osiris. And my question is if you know of some similar case in other texts that are not from the coffin text, or maybe I don't know, Damduat or some other funerary text from New Kingdom of this type of toponym related to Osiris in this way.
You mean the what kind of Osiris? You mean this Itebet?
Yeah, exactly.
No, it's not only on this fragment. So this toponym was created only for this fragment and only for this small fragment of the text. Possibly it really was not so clear for scribes in the New Kingdom. So that's why they decide to create such a very interesting alliterative form with the changing of tehepti to the Itebet biti. We divided it in two different words and created this very interesting toponym, which is often translated as really the city of the bee. But we can't find such a toponym anywhere. No in other New Kingdom funerary literature, nor in Amduat, Book of the Gates. So it was created only for this concrete place of the text. So I wasn't finding it. If somebody will find it somewhere, well, it will be very interesting for me really to see it. But I was looking for the text, for the dictionaries. Unfortunately, no. So it's a unique. That's why I told that it's something.
Yes, sometimes you have these creations that happens once and never to see it again.
Yes. But in the way tradition, they decide not to use it at all because they are completely doomed. So then it was completely unclear what does it mean. So that's why I decide to change text and to cut from it all unclear words, because we know that it was a very big reduction of the text of the Wait period, Book of the Dead, after several hundred years when it was underused, and they created the canonical tradition of the Book of the Dead, which we know today, with the numbering of spells we know today and we use today, because our numbering of the chapters of the Book of the Dead in our modern scholar understanding is a reduction of the Wait period. In the New Kingdom, nothing like this was happening in the Book of the Dead. So they have absolutely different sequence of spells there. And priests who are looked through this text, they find that some places are very unclear, and they simply cut them out of text and use it without. In some cases, they made a very interesting correction with transformation of this. I mean, with this one, Sejet emi Eshero. That Isut itmu imi Eshero became Sejet imi Eshero. So, and we see here the Enneads located in the temple of Mut-on-Seas, for example, which is absolutely nothing similar with the meaning of the boat crew of a tomb in his evening court.
Yes, I was thinking also. I found very interesting in your talk the fact that we can observe how the different changes can be classified or identified as errors or mistakes, purely mistakes, but rather than they can also be considered as reinterpretations. So they try to make sense of the material they have, even if they don't understand some part of it. They look for an answer, and it's very interesting how different processes can be involved. For example, for me, the change of Tehepti into Tebi or something like that is a phonetic matter, maybe. So because the velar consonant disappears or is softened, and then you have a dental and a labial there, the T and the B. And but the change of imu ah wer, it sounds to me more like a change due to the similarity between the sign of ah and the sign of at or anj. So because they are similar in shape. So I'm misreading maybe, and then they start to reinterpret the word totally different, like at, which could be related with the manjet bark, no, the boat of the day, as opposed to mesketet, the boat of the night. So which fits very well with the context, with the solar context.
Yes. So, because we know that there were a lot of mistakes, corruption, and something like this in the Book of the Dead, so I was trying to show that sometimes it is not mistakes. This is reinterpretation of the primary source, some spell of the coffin text. They were thought about it. They were tried to use some without changing the general semantics. If it is Osirian, if it is about Osiris, they were do something to be it the Osirian translation or transmission. And what is more interesting is the reinterpretation of this text by the modern Egyptologists. For example, with this transition of Imi Ach-Ur to Imi Yah-Ur. So when the extremely solar deity or character became absolutely lunar character in some modern interpretations, which I see also is not correct to the absolutely solar semantics of the fragment of this passage. So yes, we can see how it was also mirrored in modern Egyptological thought. It's also very interesting. So that's why I was trying not only to look on the Egyptian text, but also to look how the Egyptologists understand it. And it's also very interesting because in some cases, early interpreters, such as Lepage Renou, were more correct in their understanding than, for example, some interpreters of the 20th century or even 21st century. It's also very interesting for me.
Yes, absolutely. So, Ernesto, do we have some questions yet? No?
No, apparently no.
Okay, perfect. So everything is very clear. Yeah. Thank you very much for your talk, and I think we can.
Yeah, maybe also we are going to upload this to YouTube. So maybe if someone later watches, can ask questions on the comments on YouTube.
Yes. Okay.
We can do that.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, Ernesto, also to you for your assistance and your help with the project, as always.
You're welcome.
And see you next time then. Mykola, Ernesto.
See you next time.
Nice to see you today.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Ciao.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.